A very good afternoon to everyone. Great to be here in Korea with all of you. Such a great event, so many people. I must firstly congratulate the organizers for putting up such a grand show and for selecting such a great theme, proof of services, to show the world blockchain is not just about hype, it is actually about delivery of services. And Power Ledger, on its part, is very happy to be here to share our journey with all of you, the applications that we have developed, the solutions we have built, and the solutions that we are deploying around the world. So, befittingly, proof of services is where we stand, and we're happy to share our experiences with all of you. Let me start with a very brief introduction, and then I will get into more details. What I've done is segmented my presentation in 3 sections. One is about introducing what we do and why we do so. Obviously, then talk about blockchain, because the solutions we are trying to get to, we firmly believe that blockchain is the best tool to offer those solutions. And then also talk about the actual deployments that we have already deployed around the world. Who we are, our vision is about democratization of power. We are co-creating energy systems with communities, with citizens and businesses, where energy would be cheaper, cleaner, zero carbon, and the energy systems will be more resilient than what they are. Our mission is about to be a major contributor to transforming energy markets globally and the Paris climate goals, positively impacting 1 billion people. So, huge vision, and blockchain as a tool is a great fit in taking us in that journey. So, let me start with the first section, which is almost setting the scene as to what is happening in the energy market and how we then bring in blockchain technology as a solution mix there. I must also add here that, just as a summary, what Power Ledger offers is using blockchain technology-enabled solutions, we spin off marketplaces where energy could be traded peer-to-peer between citizens, communities, businesses. We could trade environmental commodities and also use blockchain for financing of renewable energy assets. The company is 3 years old. We've also been recognized by Sir Richard Branson, having won Extreme Tech Challenge in 2018. Onto this first slide, which talks about, which shows even if you're not from energy market, you would understand that what it is depicting is a traditional energy industry system where consumer at one end is connected to the power system or power plant at the other end, typically hundreds of kilometers away. Energy is supplied through transmission distribution network. Retailer in between buys energy from the wholesale electricity market, puts their markup, margin, and supplies to consumer at the price that they're given. There's not a lot of choice for the consumer, and this is what the energy market's been for the last several decades, 7, 8, 9 decades. Not only the physical grids look like this, but the governance framework, the regulatory framework, the control systems, the pricing systems, all have been created to reflect as if the kilowatt hours or the energy units consumed at the consumer site always travels all the way from power station through the entire transmission and distribution network, as if the grid is linear and the energy only flows in one direction. But we all know that that is not the case. There is already that transformation taking place. And the transformation is through distributed energy resources. Solar PV, energy storage systems, batteries, electric vehicles, smart inverters, they're all making a change. And depending on where you are on the evolution cycle, which country you are in, you would see the impact of these distributed energy resources in different ways. For example, in a country like Australia, 1 in 4 house is already a mini power station. I mean, I have got 6 kilowatt rooftop PV on my house. I leave my house at 6, 7 a.m. for work, and I only come back at 6 p.m. So during the day, there's a lot of energy flowing back to the grid. And there are multiple such houses. There are suburbs in Australia where we have 50 to 60% of houses with rooftop PV. So energy doesn't flow in one direction anymore. It is flowing in multi directions. And what that is also doing, the growth of these distributed renewable energy systems, is that it is therefore reducing the usage from the traditional grid, which always has the fixed cost because there is an infrastructure that was already created, and they need to recover the cost of that infrastructure. So for those who cannot afford to buy rooftop PV or batteries, or cannot be part of distributed energy resources systems, well, they end up paying higher prices because grid invariably charges them higher costs to recover the cost of the infrastructure. What is starting to happen now is the system's progressing from the first slide that you saw to almost a hybrid version now, where grid still has significant role, but through these smart technologies, through disruptive technologies as well, you can say we are now getting to the situation where we have smart homes, microgrids, and multiple sort of dimensions of how distributed energy resources are starting to impact the grid and the energy systems at large. You would have seen the roles of batteries starting to appear, community-sized batteries, individual homes with a lot of solar and battery, shopping centers, apartment complexes, which are all, I think, fitting into this sort of scenario where the energy system's starting to move to a hybrid system. This is me setting the scene as to where we're going with our solutions. And all of this is happening because these are the key drivers. The falling system costs of solar PV is one of the key drivers. This is a slide for Australia, but many other markets are starting to reflect this. And at some stage, every country will see something like this. Australia is probably ahead of the curve. Rooftop PV installations are forecast to grow at average 8.7% every year on year. And if you see the projection from 2017 to 2037, it is a massive continuous growth. What that will do to the grid and the consumption in the traditional way from the grid. We're already seeing continuing investment in clean technology around the world, and the price of lithium-ion batteries continuing to fall at a very rapid rate. Look at the price in 2010 to where it is in 2018, and the trajectory is further down. On the other hand, what's happening to the electricity prices? Again, this is an Australian example, but various markets around the world are starting to mimic this. From 2007 onwards, you see that the consumer price index or the inflation has been 1 to 2%, but if you look at the price of energy increases or electricity price increases, that's been many folds, many times more than the inflation rate. Just on the network charges, because of all these disruptive technologies coming in, the network charges, as I said, the network still has to recover its cost. So those who are staying connected are seeing the kind of increases every state in Australia is seeing. Now, what that is starting to do for individuals is that people are saying, well, why should I not defect from the grid or buy very little from the grid? And when that happens, it just escalates that cycle of what we call as utility death spiral, that more people are incentivized to buy less and less from the grid, which then forces the grid to continue to increase their prices. That acts as additional incentive, again, for those who are staying connected to get off the grid, and so on. So that's the utility death spiral. And literally, those who cannot afford the distributed energy resources systems themselves end up paying extremely high prices, almost a perverse outcome. You want to support that section of the community, but instead they end up in energy poverty. So what Power Ledger has done is almost turned the physical grid into energy trading platform using blockchain technology, where someone like me, as a prosumer, I can produce electricity and I consume electricity as well. So I'm a prosumer. So instead of selling back to the grid, if I could sell to my neighbors or to other members of the community on peer-to-peer basis, where I can monetize my renewable energy asset in a fair way, and not having to rely on government subsidy or grants, and my neighbors who are probably using energy at the time when I'm having excess energy, able to purchase cheaper energy, cleaner energy, than what they would be buying from the grid. So, and when that happens, they'll probably use more of that as well. So it improves the utilization of the grid. So me as a renewable energy asset owner is winner. The other consumers are winner, buying cheaper, cleaner. And the grid improves the utilization and stays relevant for longer time instead of getting into that death spiral mode. So we've created what we say is a market-making technology that bridges gaps in the system to make it more fluid and responsive. And how do we do that? We've created solutions which can be categorized into three main categories: energy trading, which could be peer-to-peer energy trading across the grid or behind the meter in a shopping center or at a microgrid, or it could be through a virtual power plant, where if you have enough distributed capacity, distributed batteries, you could aggregate them and almost create the same effect as a single large battery, and provide solutions not just for energy arbitrage or cheaper energy, but solutions for the network as well, for reducing congestion in the grid or stability of the grid or control of frequency and other ancillary services. Other solutions in the environmental trading or commodity trading. So renewable energy does not just have value in kilowatt hours or the units of energy. Every megawatt hour that renewable energy generates can also be converted into a renewable energy credit that has value in the market. So that's the environmental commodity. And blockchain, using the blockchain technology, you could create that proof of provenance, simplify the system, make it cheaper, remove the disintermediation, remove the brokers, make the entire renewable energy credit trading system cheaper by doing the measurement, verification, tracking, and also creating digital exchange where buyers and sellers can trade energy with each other or see the trades, which improves the liquidity of the trades as well, and thereby bringing cheap prices lower. And the third set of solutions are in the renewable energy asset financing, where blockchain potentially can fractionalize the ownership of asset and allow retail investors to participate. So that's our solution mix. And why do we use blockchain? What's better than blockchain for microtransactions and for creating single source of truth? Proof of provenance for instantaneous settlement. It provides an immutable records. So consumers and prosumers can trade with each other. Retailers could trade with other retailers. We could create off-market settlement. All of that not possible if you're not using blockchain. In fact, I don't need to talk too much about blockchain here. You all know the uses and applications, so I just validate and ratify that. And how do we use the blockchain in these three categories? We're picking up smart meter data. So all we are doing is reading the data instantaneously as soon as it is ready to be read. The data is communicated to our platform, and we can see who's got excess energy, who is a seller, who is a buyer. On our platform, they can set buying and selling rates for kilowatt hour trading or for renewable energy credit trading. And we can also fractalize the ownership of asset, where blockchain becomes an asset register and income register. What we use is a dual token model, where between prosumers and consumers, they use Sparks as a token. Now, Sparks is not a cryptocurrency, it's a cryptographic token, which is pegged to the lowest denomination of currency in the markets it is operating in. So for example, in Australia, one Spark would be representative of 1 cent, 1 Australian cent. In US, it'll be 1 US cent. In Korea, it'll be 1 won. So if at the prosumer and consumer level, let's say the trade takes place and the price for that trade is 9 won, consumer must have 9 Sparks in their digital wallet. When they buy 1 kilowatt hour from their prosumer, their digital wallet is instantaneously debited. Prosumer's digital wallet is instantaneously credited. These could be, and when consumer needs to top up through payment gateway on our platform, they can top up Sparks. Prosumer, when they have collected enough Sparks, can redeem their Sparks by selling it back again through the, converting it back to the fiat currency. So these transactions, again, there is no value, there's no, the denomination doesn't change, the value doesn't change, the Sparks always remain pegged to the lowest denomination of the currency. These Sparks come from the higher level token, which is called Power Token. And Power Token is a cryptocurrency, but what it does here is 3 things. It acts as a smart bond or a license to use our platform. It also provides liquidity of Sparks in the system. So Sparks are coming from Power Token based on the market rate at the time. It also acts as a prudential warranty, because there might be an outstanding trades at any given time. So escrowed Power Token would serve as the prudential warranty to make sure that even if the application host who is using the platform, if they go under, the consumers and prosumers are not at any loss. And using this, the sets of applications that we've created, the first one we call it as XGrid, which is about peer-to-peer energy transaction between prosumer-consumer across the grid. So one house can trade with another house. And I'll give you, again, using my own example, in Perth, where I live, when I buy energy from the local grid, I pay around 27 cents per kilowatt hour. We do have feed-in tariff, which means if I have rooftop PV and there is excess energy, I can sell back to the grid and I get around 7.5 cents. So I'm buying at 27, when I sell back, I get 7.5. Instead, if I could sell to my neighbors at maybe 17 or 20 or 22, I'm monetizing my asset in a very fair way. My neighbor is able to get cheaper. And to do all of those transactions, we will obviously need the physical grid which exists. And grid, for its part, for allowing for that transaction, would be able to charge a transaction fee as well. Those transactions using our technology can be done real-time settlement. The retailer or energy company could become part of the solution as well by offering this as an application host to their consumer base. Our platform automatically converts electricity credits into fiat currency, transactions viewable on the blockchain. So each of the consumer and prosumer get a web login. They're able to see what is the status of credit or debit, who they're buying energy from in the peer-to-peer network, who are their top 3 buyers, top 3 sellers. All those fun facts could be easily accessible to them through our platform. The other solution is what we call as UGrid or microgrid. This is typically for embedded networks where you have a master meter and then multiple sub-meters behind. So it could be an apartment complex, could be a shopping center, could be a retirement village where there is a master meter in front and individuals with individual sub-meters. The way it works here, I'll give you an example. One of the apartment buildings in Perth or in the city of Fremantle has about 50 kilowatt rooftop PV, which is jointly owned by 25 unit owners. they also have 110 kilowatt hour battery as well. So their share of energy is allocated to their individual apartments. When they're using their share, that's fine. When they're on holiday or not at home, that excess energy could be traded as peer-to-peer energy trade in an embedded network, and that's our X-Grid application, where they can monetize that value of energy instead of, again, through a market-based mechanism, instead of selling back to the grid, where they may or may not get any return on that energy. This set of next 3 slides will be about virtual power plant, we call VPP, where you start to then bring in distributed batteries or even electric vehicles in the mix as well. And the solution allows for a whole lot of services which could start from when these assets are available for trading energy, then they would trade energy, but they can also be, the distributed assets could also be consolidated or aggregated to offer other control services which could be used by the network to relieve congestion from the network at different times. Could also be for power quality or active, reactive power management, or even the higher level services for grid stability itself. Typically in Australian markets or developed markets, you would have electricity market operator who would need those types of services, an immediate response to manage frequency at a very short time. So these distributed batteries could make that solution available. What PowerLedger does is, for any of these services, it enables, through its blockchain technology applications, instantaneous transfer of that value that these asset owners are able to offer. Or we say that in a typical standard demand response product in electricity market, I don't know whether it happens in Korea, I'm sure it does happen here as well, that on a very hot day when the system demand is peaking and the systems operator is struggling to manage the demand and supply, some large businesses or customers will get phone call that if you didn't use electricity, let's say between 3 and 5 p.m. at the peak demand intervals, we will actually pay you a benefit for not using electricity at the time because you're helping the grid to remain stabilized. Typically, that value will be seen in the electricity bill at the end of the billing cycle, which could be 30 days or 60 days or 90 days later. And the consumer or the asset owner who might have offered that service might even have forgotten that they actually ever did offer that service. So their interest to participate in this service is not great. But by utilizing a platform like ours and service like ours, we could even tell them, look, take the kids to the beach, it's a very hot day. By the time you reach the beach and buy ice creams for the kids, the price for those ice creams or the value is already in your digital wallet. It becomes a whole new response cycle. You create an agile community which is more willing to participate in services that allow them to monetize the value benefits, but also be part of services for improving the stability of grid and control of the network itself. Some of the developers in the room might like this slide. This is how we create the self-executing smart contracts to enable these types of complicated energy services, where pretty much from fault management through to voltage support or power quality, you could create a smart contract bridge. And these are self-executing contracts where the value benefit is provided instantaneously. You create a stack of services, and the most optimized service gets activated at any given time. So we know the Paris Agreement goals, and recently Arena made the statement that renewables need to be scaled up to 6 times faster to get to these Paris targets. So we created a solution for everyday retail customers to take part in renewable energy asset through investment using blockchain technology, where you don't have to necessarily own a big, how do you become part of, let's say, a solar farm that might be built in your neighborhood or somewhere in the city or or in this country. You fractionalize those types of assets, and blockchain becomes an asset register and also your income register, enables everyday citizens to take part in these types of investments. We call it as asset germination events. I mentioned briefly about renewable energy credits or environmental commodities. US market alone is about $3 billion in that space. And typically, to enable buying and selling of those renewable energy credits, you have to go through brokers or over-the-counter type of inefficient methods where you might end up paying anywhere between 3 to 9% brokerage fee. By utilizing blockchain from end-to-end solution or for end-to-end solution from measuring the kilowatt hours being generated from renewable power plant to verifying, then reporting to the regulator, through to creating a digital exchange, again enabled by blockchain, to improve the liquidity of trades, you start to create massive efficiencies and make the system a lot cheaper than the current systems are. So that's our solution we call it C6 and C6 Plus, so for carbon markets or renewable energy commodities for trading of these, the value of these renewable energies. So that brings me to the part where we can talk about the proof of services. So I talked about how energy markets being transformed. It's progressing from traditional linear grid to almost a hybrid grid, which is less centralized. It's almost decentralized or distributed or a combination of all of that. To the mix of solutions that we've created in order to almost facilitate an orderly transformation for electricity industry from this centralized to distributed hybrid market. And these are some of the projects that I'm going to talk about where we are providing this proof of concept which is taking shape into reality in applications. It's a project in the middle of Bangkok City. It's called T77 Precinct. It's a gated community where there's an international school, there's a shopping center, a dental hospital, and 3 apartment blocks. Some have rooftop PV, some do not. They all have differing load profile, as in they don't use same consumption of energy all the time. For example, the school finishes at around 3:30, so they have a lot of spare energy from 3:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. every day, and on Saturday, Sunday, a lot of spare energy through the rooftop PV that they have. Shopping center, on the other hand, is a big energy user. It is operating 7 days a week, and it needs a lot of power. They're all connected to Metropolitan Electricity Authority's grid. But they're able to share or buy energy from each other as well. So first they use their own rooftop PV energy, if there is any spare left, at a pre-agreed price that is set on our platform. They are able to trade on a peer-to-peer basis these kilowatt hours or the trading of energy. And what that enables is them to be able to buy cheaper, cleaner energy than buying from the grid. And typically these trades are taking place at 10 to 15% cheaper than the grid price. Other project is Chiang Mai University, where around 200 buildings of the university will be having rooftop PV, and they will first use that energy themselves, but any excess will be available for trading with other buildings. So they will be able to obviously decarbonize their carbon footprint, at the same time being able to buy cheaper energy, again using blockchain platform. In Japan, Kansai Electric Power Company, which is the second largest utility in Japan, they're using our platform, again, they've tested it for peer-to-peer energy trading. The first project finished just recently, very successfully. They're now moving on to doing other things with us as well, more in the renewable energy credit trading space. In our own backyard, this is a project in Western Australia where we're sort of proving all the three applications of our product basket. So it's a project sponsored by Australian government, federal government of Australia, and also state government through Landcorp is a partner in this project. The local utility, Western Power, and the energy retailer, Synergy, are also participating in this with us, along with 2 universities. So very high-profile project, which is looking at new ways of how energy could be utilized in communities. So peer-to-peer energy trading, I mentioned high proliferation or penetration of rooftop PV in Australia. So this suburb has lots of customers with rooftop PV. They're able to, instead of selling back to the grid, they're able to trade that with their neighbors. And Western Power, which is the utility, charges a fee for those transactions. But in the end, consumers are able to buy cheaper energy, and prosumers are able to monetize asset in a sort of market-based mechanism in a fair way. The treasurer of the state recently visited the site, and he talked about the mix of innovations at the East Village, and it's now possible to achieve modern sustainable living through utilizing these technologies. So we are helping progression of sustainable living. In US, we have projects both on East Coast and the West Coast. This is American Power Net in Pennsylvania. The building on the right-hand side is their headquarters that has a lot of rooftop PV. In the past, all of that energy was just going back to the grid, unaccounted, not sort of monetized. Now they're, by using our platform, blockchain-enabled platform, they are now able to sell that energy to their neighbors, to 2 commercial customers. So this was a pilot project, but it's progressing to other deployments as well. White Gum Valley, another project in Western Australia. This is a U-Grid project where apartment complex where people jointly own renewable energy asset, and their allocated share, when they're not using it, allocated share of energy, they are able to sell to their peers or neighbors. Another project in Europe, in Austria, we're working with Energy Steiermark. They are one of the prominent energy utilities, a distributor. They own poles and wires, as well as they retail energy as well. They have been testing our system to almost look at creating a business model that could be deployed for peer-to-peer energy trading in their entire market. We are about to get into this partnership with the Government of Malaysia, Sustainable Energy Development Authority, which is owned by Malaysian government through Ministry of Energy, has chosen us to partner with them to do a national level peer-to-peer energy trial in Kuala Lumpur. And the aim for that is to see how blockchain-enabled peer-to-peer energy trading could act as an incentive, or which in turn then accelerates the growth of rooftop PV to help them achieve their renewable energy targets. So in some of the developed markets, it is happening because there is already a lot of rooftop PV, and we're helping the owners of rooftop PV monetize the asset in a fair way, allowing the consumers who cannot buy the rooftop PV, but buying cheaper energy from these prosumers. In other markets, this can act as a policy mechanism to help accelerate the growth of rooftop PV and cheaper, cleaner energy in the system. Clearway Energy has recently partnered with us. Now, this is a very large renewable energy company in the United States with 6,000 megawatt of renewable energy portfolio, so solar farms, wind farms, and other renewable energy assets that they build, they own, and operate. Obviously, they also generate renewable energy credits, and these credits need to be sold. So they, using our platform, they're able to to do the trading of or the processes we are building in partnership with them, platform that will enable more efficiently buying and selling of renewable energy credits. I will accelerate because I've got only 5 minutes left. So another shopping center chain in Australia using our solutions. And as I said, we started 3 years ago. We had 1 or 2 proof of concepts back then. Our footprint's now expanded into 7 or 8 countries and growing. And just to end in terms of physical infrastructure, we're not talking about laying new sets of cables or changing anything drastically. All we do is read the data from smart meters. The data is through API interface transferred to our platform, and our platform does the rest. That's the team that's been sort of working, the main members of the team, and that brings me to the end of the presentation. I think I've taken a lot of time, but I'll stop here now and happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vinod Tiwari. So let us have a time to answer the questions from the audience. 네, 첫 번째 질문입니다. In terms of the transaction of the renewable energy, there are various policies and regulations in different countries. So it is difficult for small-sized prosumer to take part in. Also, energy industry is more conservative industry in terms of using blockchain technology. So to overcome such issues, what kind of contributions or what kind of efforts is Power Ledger making? And what is the difference between the Power Ledger and LO3 Energy?
Oh, great question. The second part is even greater. Look, I think some of the examples that I gave is what we are doing, basically. So yes, it is a very conservative industry. As I said right in the beginning, for several decades, 7, 8, 9 decades, the energy system have remained the same. It is now going through transformation, not because of blockchain, but through other disruptive technologies like solar PV and batteries, etc. What we're doing is enabling, facilitating that transformation from centralized to decentralized or distributed systems in a more orderly, innovative way using blockchain technology. Now, regulations obviously are, regulations are done to regulate business as usual. Regulations don't regulate innovation. So innovation has to come in and through proof of concepts, pilots, prove the efficacy of the innovative solution that we are creating, which are then taken up and introduced as larger solution. So most of the project that we've done, we had to go through initially through some kind of pilot or proof of concepts, and then which also brings together small rooftop PV owners. Some of the examples I gave are now looking at peer-to-peer energy trading across grid. So yeah, initially through baby steps, and also we are talking to various organizations in Korea as well, and hopefully we will together work with the various companies here to change the regulations. And just last bit about LO3, there are multiple companies and everyone's got a space in this. This is a huge industry, so everyone will have a space. I think LO3 does a lot of things we do are fairly common, but one of the things, we don't have any specific hardware that is required for our solution. We are purely a software company, and we use existing smart meters. My understanding is LO3 requires some specific hardware to go with their solution. That's probably the main difference.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, there are many questions from audiences to you, but for the sake of time, we will wrap up the Q&A session here. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I'm available for more time, so please reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you. Thanks, very glad to be here.
네, 아쉽지만 시간 관계상 여기서 마무리하도록 하겠습니다. 좋은 말씀해주신 비노드 티와리님께 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.